Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We're going to start off here first with a look at our surface winds very early this morning here. This is about 5 a.m. East Coast time. We are watching a few different areas, okay? We have the tropical system right in through here, which is named Fred. There's a second tropical system that is right over here that's named Grace, and we do have tropical depression number 8 that we're keeping an eye on. There's also a system over here in the Pacific that will be moving away from the west coast of the United States. But with all this activity going on in the tropics, let's go first check in on what the National Hurricane Center's website looks like, just to get some ideas on some strength here. So Fred is currently, as of the 4 a.m. update, a tropical storm. It's got wind speeds that are less than 74 miles an hour, which would be the threshold to cross to become a hurricane. It does have max sustained winds at 50 miles an hour. Now Grace, just like Fred did, is struggling as it goes over the island of Hispaniola, the mountains on the Greater Antilles. So the island of Hispaniola and Cuba often are very disrupted to tropical cyclones. And so it's got wind speeds that are just below the threshold to become a tropical storm again at 35 miles an hour. Tropical Depression 8, again, about the same strength as Grace, but out here spinning, around Bermuda, and we need to see where all three of these systems are going here in the near term. So we're going to look first at some satellite imagery, because in the overnight hours, Tropical Storm Fred has really tapped into a lot of heat transfer coming off of the Gulf of Mexico, and has developed a very well-defined area of deep convection. And we're going to watch this strengthen until it eventually later on today makes landfall right around this part of the Florida Peninsula. But as you can see in this animation, watch the disorganization become very organized as the well-developed storms begin to get going. And just to show you one neat thing about this, so we not only look at how cold those cloud tops are as a metric on how powerful a tropical system is, or really, to be honest with you, any weather system, but in tropical systems specifically, do you see the fanning out right here of the high-level cirrus clouds? That means that this storm is not having any trouble exhausting that air aloft. It also means it's in a lower wind shear environment, and that is why we've watched Fred really get going here in the early morning hours on Monday. So let's take a look at where Fred is expected to go. This is the latest model guidance. So a bit of a shift over what we thought a week ago, where Fred was expected to come in something like this. There has been an upper level ridge in this area that's helped push Fred off a bit to the west. And now the latest track guidance from the European model, pretty tight, basically taking it right over the spine of the Appalachian Mountains. And therefore, we're going to have a gradient from the west to the east across North Carolina in terms of our precipitation. But this is also going to do a lot to really work on the drought that is to the north of us here in the Appalachian Mountains. I'm going to show you that in just a few moments. But I would like to point out that upper level ridge that's been a major part of Fred, and it's right in through here. So we're looking at the mid-level winds right now, and you can see that ridge initially was pushing Fred in this direction, but it's now going to help to guide Fred farther to the north. And the trough that's in place here, can you just kind of see how they're going to put kind of the squeeze on the flow of Fred and pull him in a much more predictable path to the north here, and then turning eventually toward the northeast very soon. Now, Grace, really quickly, still an open wave. Do you see that? So that's why it's been downgraded to a tropical depression, no well-defined closed circulation. But it appears that the steering current for Grace is really going to keep Grace pretty far to the south, but still pull it into the Gulf of Mexico, where I do expect quite a bit of development. But we'll cover Grace relatively quickly because it does not appear to be a threat to the Carolinas. The National Hurricane Center has Grace regaining tropical storm strength in the Caribbean, and then coming near the Yucatan Peninsula, and possibly staying tropical storm once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. But this will be on Friday, so a lot can change between now and then. And the tropical cyclone tracks, what we just want to watch out for would be for anything to take Grace and turn Grace back here through parts of Texas, because that moisture can get carried over to the Carolinas eventually. So this is a bit too far out to make a very well-educated guess on it doing that. In fact, most ensemble members bring this into Mexico and really prevent it from making that northward turn. But I'm telling you, there's just a lot of uncertainty on what happens when this system gets here into the Gulf of Mexico. So I'll watch it this week, and then we'll know over the weekend and be able to report to you next week if it is going to indeed make that northward turn and get eventually its moisture all the way over here to the Carolinas. Now, Tropical Depression 8, as you can see here, in fact, this is the GFS guidance. Let's go take a look. Doesn't look like the European model provided some guidance on that this morning. So we'll stick with the GFS And as you notice that we are expecting this one to kind of stay out here in the open ocean, just spinning around Bermuda and possibly increasing in intensity, but thankfully not moving here toward the east coast of the United States. So with all of that, let's now go take a look at the latest we have from the 0Z European model, so we can get some ideas on the timing of this, plus other precipitation as well, because we know that early this morning we were still watching quite a few storms moving through the area, already putting out some heavy rain, especially over in the Appalachian Mountains. So as we go throughout the morning this morning, the scattered showers and storms still in place. We're going to see a lot of that this afternoon, scattered storms around as we wait on Fred. By Monday night, should be making landfall right here, okay, in this part of Florida. So for us today, a lot of scattered precipitation across North Carolina. As we go from there into Tuesday morning, afternoon, and evening, a lot of the moisture will be on the northern side of Fred. And so therefore, we're going to watch the moisture coming in from the south first and then spreading into the Appalachian Mountains. This is Tuesday evening. Then getting into the overnight hours, Wednesday into Wednesday morning, afternoon, and evening. That's where we see what's left of Fred moving here over the Appalachian Mountains into Virginia. So we've got chances throughout the front half of this week of seeing some wetter conditions. Now after that, if we just kind of let this play on through, this is Thursday morning, afternoon, and evening. Again, scattered precipitation is going to be the mainstay of what we're dealing with. But there's a larger event that's now happening to our west, and it's right here. Okay, now this is late this week, but a pretty decent upper level shortwave is going to be cutting out of Wyoming into North and South Dakota, increasing the rainfall there. And why I'm bringing this up is because it'll be that system. Okay, see, we could get into our weekend going over to a drier note and also some warmer conditions, but this system here is ultimately going to start to push things around quite a bit. And as you notice, by early next week, this will be on a very late hours on Saturday. That low will have a pretty strong front that will be coming into this area. And the question is, will this increase our rainfall chances on Sunday? So you see by Sunday, European model tucks it right in through here, and the leading front comes down through this area. And therefore, by Sunday evening, just may increase our chances at rainfall overall. But again, it appears that we've got better chances of rain every day now through the next 7 days, possibly drying out a bit once we get toward the very end of the weekend into early next week. We're going to watch that front to see how things shape up. Now, we do already have, as you can see coming through here, flood watches. So I want to talk more about this flooding potential, again, because of not only Fred, but, we just go back and look. This was the last 16 hours, and you can see we had a lot of rainfall yesterday on Sunday as those storms slowly lifted toward the north, but they had plenty of moisture to kind of keep rebuilding. And you can even see on the back side here, we had quite a bit of rainfall coming into the Appalachian Mountains. In fact, just putting it all together, let me shrink this so you can see a little bit better. This is just the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation. And they're starting to see some Fred, but we did have across the area, large area between a third of an inch, and some places even approaching well above an inch to an inch and a half, 2 inches of rainfall already before Fred gets here. So we just need to see what this means in terms of where we're going, because where we've been as of late, well, this is the total precipitation ranks for our last 30 days or so. And you can see the drought developing to our north here in Virginia and West Virginia, the Appalachian Mountains. We were wetter along the coast, drier in pockets in the interior here, but still not overly dry. And the rainfall that's coming through, well, let's just add it all up here from the European model first, okay? So as we work our way through Monday, again, the rain is farther to the north. That's what we saw in the overnight hours. We then have let's just take this out here to Thursday morning. I want to stop there. There we go. This is where we'll already have seen Fred move all the way through. So you will notice there'll be a pretty strong gradient from the Appalachian Mountains to the coast. And now the coast has been kind of taken out of the threat area, unlike a week ago where we thought Fred would be coming into that region. So how much rain are we talking about here? Well, possibly around Raleigh, there's a decent chance that we get an inch to maybe 2 inches of rainfall. And as you go west of there, those rainfall totals really increase as you get over the mountains. Now this again is just through Thursday morning. The system takes shape in the upper Midwest, then, see it right there? And then that's the system where as we go through maybe a drier end of our week, we push that frontal boundary over us and maybe just add a little bit more precipitation to our totals here. So this is the map showing you the probability through this Saturday of getting 2 inches of rainfall. So you can look down here at the bottom and see the probabilities, and you notice that much of the heaviest rainfall is in the Appalachian Mountains. And so I'm going to be on the lookout and very concerned about the flooding threat in that area. Okay. Now here, let's take a look at how we expect things to shape up for week 2. The models have been pretty consistent with this, pushing this trough right here through the U.S. But the flow is relatively weak, and it's doing something like that. And the models have washed it out quite a bit. Do need to keep an eye on the trough that's developing on the backside here in Alaska, because it could be important for the next system that kind of run through here as we get into September. It's kind of crazy to be thinking about that, but that's where we are. Now, when we take a look at what this pattern gives us for week 2, generally speaking, with that trough in place here, we do see better storms from Texas all the way through the Midwest and upper Midwest. But it also keeps, parts of the Tennessee and Ohio Valley approaching the Appalachian Mountains with a better chance at being wetter than normal than drier. So I'd say that overall right now, the week 2 time period, getting us out to August 30th, does carry with it a slight chance of being a little bit wetter than normal. What's important to see, though, is that the European model out to week 2 is not seeing another tropical system, coming through. So that is drier in terms of tropical systems coming through at this point. Doesn't mean the tropics are inactive, but we're going to go after Fred and Grace. I think we're going to have a little bit of a lull in the activity here. Now let's talk about those temperatures. I think the NDFD is biased a little bit cool overall, but this will all be, of course, cloud cover dependent and rainfall dependent. So you could get some times where the sun peeks through and with the humidity in place could crank those temperatures up very quickly. But you do notice that on Monday today, we're expecting high, for example, in Raleigh, about 83. And throughout the week, it's going to stay there in the low to mid 80s. See that? That's all the way up to Wednesday. As we get out toward the end of the week, once the system is passed through, then we go back up to our normal 85 to 90 degree temperature range. And that's what we see going out here to Sunday. All right. Now, just to make a point here, look at the system rolling through the northern plains. The Dakotas, Minnesota, this is an area we've been watching carefully due to massive soil moisture deficits, a lack of rainfall. And then all of a sudden, this front comes through, brings in the rain, and drops their temperatures off considerably. I mean, back into the upper 70s is, in this case, they're normally in the upper 80s for temperatures here, so it's going to be pretty cool there. And then if we look out there, day 5 through 10, just some of the latest data here from the European model. Got a lot of cooler air with that trough in the midsection of North America, but we could see a warm bias returning here toward the Carolinas. Again, this isn't extreme heat. We've really avoided that a lot this particular summer, but getting our temperatures here, to finish August to be, 3 to 8 degrees above normal is what we could be expecting here. And we look out the day 5 through 10. Day 10 through 15, the pattern is washed out. Let's get over to that map right here. There you go. And while the models continue to kind of anchor that that ridge in some place in the west, if the flow comes around it like this, that's a signal for more normal temperatures for us over here in the Carolinas. So we'll just watch out for that day 10 through 15 pattern to evolve. And again, that takes us all the way to September the 1st. Okay, what I want to do now is talk long range. Let's see where things are going and try to get an idea about where this is going to go. We're going to begin first with a look here at what's happening in the tropics. Now, I like to show you these maps and these figures because I like to look for where the best rising motion is. And what you can see is that from the 17th of August all the way to the 29th, those blue-green colors are here and they're here. So that means we're going to see a lot of rising motion over Africa. That's what both sides of this means. And the most of our sinking motion will be here in the middle of the Pacific. This also means that the MJO is likely going to slow down, but I want to make a point here about two things. First, let's just go out there and look at this map. This would be the 11 to 15 day forecast. And as it loads kind of slowly here, this just tells me that we're not necessarily putting a cap back on the tropics as we get into the month of September. And remember, we're now just about 20 to 25 days away from the peak in the hurricane season. All the subsidence is here. But this does mean the MJO is making a progression through phases 3, 4, maybe even over to phase 5. But as long as we keep the upper level suppression here, we have better chances of having rising motion. And what I'm basically translating this into is the tropical season is going to stay relatively active here for a while. Now, if we come back to one other thing, I want to point out what's going on with the trade winds. There we go. Because if we let this load, there it is. you do see this blue shading in here through the next half of month. And that just indicates where we've got some stronger trade winds in the Central Pacific Ocean. And we need to talk about that because it does have an implication on where the MJO goes. The latest European weeklies have kind of brought it out of phase 1 into phase 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's moving, but it did slow down over what I had originally projected. Now, why that's important is because that's going to relate to our ocean temperature pattern. Watch this animation. Let's let it start over here. There it goes back to July 16th. You can see as this plays that there is some cooler water emerging here, while a lot of change in the North Pacific temperatures. Look at the cooler water coming in through this area. Now, as we see this La Nina develop, I want to let you know that the Southern Oscillation Index, which is a measure of the La Nina, the stronger or the higher it goes, the stronger the La Nina. Well, back about the end of July, it peaked out here, about 16. We've since seen a bit of a change in the trade winds. It's now back down here around a value of 6 or 7. Now, that's the threshold we typically look for if we're going to continue to talk about La Nina. And so this will be critical to watch. Now, it could go down and continue to decrease for a little while, but we do expect this to make a turn back up at some point and continue to give us a better outlook for a La Nina-like fall. Now, in the near term, when we look at what that, well, the La Nina plus the Pacific jet stream plus the open Gulf of Mexico, what that all is going to do to our September precipitation pattern, we do see that it favors wetter conditions across much of the U.S. Now, we always have low predictability here throughout September, and the wild card is always tropical systems. You could make a great forecast using the models, using analogs for September, and then blow it simply because a tropical system comes through and changes everything. But it would appear, and this is consistent with that behavior in the Southern Oscillation Index, that we're going to be normal, maybe drier toward the coast. Again, a wild card, tropical cyclones, and we're familiar with that and understand that quite well. So let's finish this out by showing you this static map here on August 11th. Now, this is South America. This is Australia. So we're cutting across the Pacific Ocean here, and this is depth. And what I want you to notice is there's cool water in place here that will be surfacing, which means we will be seeing, weak La Nina conditions developing during the fall. Now, what that historically means, let's blow this up here, is as we go into the month of October, all right, there we are, if we compare the precipitation to the value of the Southern Oscillation Index, if the Southern Oscillation Index is positive, which it currently is, that tends to be very weakly correlated with wetter conditions. It tends to be drier in the midsection of the country during harvest. But these correlations are weak, and I want to make that very clear. Seasonal forecasting in spring and fall, because they are transition seasons, is when we have our lowest predictability. So this is all just, to be honest, it's speculative. I'm trying to pull out what I think the most dominant signal will be, and I'm using that. So what I want you to do is, let's shrink this back up so we can see the other graphics. There we go. This is the first thing I want you to watch. If you just go to cpc.ncep.noaa.gov, or if you can just Google CPC, I want you to watch later today or tomorrow, because the Climate Prediction Center is going to update on their main website, cpc.ncep.noaa.gov. We're going to get brand new September, October, November updates in their temperature and precip. Now, this is what they called for August, September, October. And while they, just like I do, struggle with getting accurate and skillful long-range forecasts, because we all do, it'll be another piece of information we can use to think about how fall is going to shape up. The latest data we have, though, is shown right here. And this would be the September, October, November precipitation anomalies. And what I want to do for you is, you do see that it's on the drier side, but again, wild card being hurricanes. But as we finish hurricane season, this is October, November, December. This is now November, December, January, and then December, January, February. You notice, as I did, I'll step backward now. It's a 3-month sliding window that the models are really honing in on. Let's go forward again. Possibly a drier fall and early winter. And I want to keep an eye on that just because it seems to be a pretty robust signal here in the longer range forecast. So we covered a lot today, but I'll wrap it up there. Keep an eye on the radar. Watch for Tropical Cyclone Fred, and we'll give you another update next week. Thank you so much.